Hey guys, welcome back to GX Story Sleeping. Tonight we crawl into the suffocating dark underworld of medieval mines, the kind of place where the moment you step in, you start regretting every life choice that led you here. You're going to feel the soot in your throat, the weight of the earth above your head, and the distinct, unshakable feeling that the walls really don't want you there. Because let's be honest, mines in the Middle Ages weren't just dangerous. They were absurdly, almost cartoonishly, hostile to human life. Forget hard hats or steel-toed boots. Your best defense down here is prayer, and maybe a wooden charm if you're lucky. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cool or sweltering, drop your location and local time down in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the yawning mouth of a mine in, let's say, 13th century Saxony. It's not much more than a hole in the side of a hill, reinforced with twisted wood and good intentions. There's no gate, no warning sign, and definitely no waiver to sign. If something bad happens, well, it happens. You adjust your tunic, grip your crude iron pick, and prepare to descend. The air is already different, cooler, but thick. Your torch flickers, casting shadows that twitch and shudder like they're trying to warn you. The entrance slope is damp and uneven. Under your feet, the mud pulls at your shoes with every step. There's no official path, just ruts dug out by generations of desperate feet. As you go deeper, the light fades fast. You might get a faint shaft of daylight for the first 10 meters or so, but after that, it's all up to whatever open flame you're brave enough to carry into this dry wooden death maze. That's right, fire. A literal flame, in a place lined with splintery beams, crumbling rock, and dust that might as well be gunpowder. The main lighting solution? Tiny oil lamps or dripping tallow candles pinned to your helmet, assuming you even have one. The smell is cloying, a blend of hot metal, damp earth, and sweat that is soaked into the very walls. Mine are sometimes worked by firelight relay. Basically, the guy ahead of you lights the path, and you carry the flame forward like some doom-laden Olympic torch. But if one lamp goes out, the darkness doesn't just fall. It crashes down on you like a wave. It's the kind of darkness you can feel, thick and choking. People got lost. People died just from not being able to find their way back. And even when you can see, it's not much comfort. The walls are wet in places, glistening with mineral-rich moisture that runs in sinister rivulets. The beams groan under pressure, shifting slowly as the mountain subtly changes its mind about supporting human ambitions. You catch a shiver at the base of your spine, not from the cold, but from the way the tunnel seems to breathe, like it's alive and watching you. Here's the kicker. This is considered one of the better mines. Some nobleman with a coin purse and a death wish has invested in it, which means there might actually be a pulley system, or at least a ladder that hasn't snapped in two. Historically, places like the Erzgebirge, the ore mountains between modern-day Germany and the Czech Republic, were mining hotspots. Silver, tin, and copper fueled the wealth of kings and bishops. Entire towns sprang up around shafts carved into the mountain like stab wounds. Some scholars debate just how organized these early operations were, but most agree that by the late 1200s, mining was becoming an industrial monster. And yet, for all the precious metal extracted, the real cost was paid in breath, bone, and blood. By now, your back is damp with sweat. You haven't even lifted your pick yet, and already your legs ache from crouching in a space barely tall enough to kneel. The tunnel is narrowing. You duck low, scraping your elbow on sharp rock. There's no turning around. Someone's coming in behind you. You're committed now. Welcome to the mine. You probably won't survive this. You take another shallow breath. It's thick, stale, and tinged with something metallic. Something wrong. The air in here doesn't feel alive. It's like breathing inside a coffin made of wet stone. And technically, you kind of are. Because in medieval mines, oxygen wasn't something you could rely on. There's a faint hissing sound from somewhere up ahead. A whisper almost. Maybe it's just dripping water. Or maybe it's worse. In mines like these, bad air had a name. Choke damp. That's the medieval miner's enemy number one. A pocket of oxygen-depleted air that could sneak up on you like a ghost. No smell, no warning, just dizziness, then unconsciousness, then nothing. Your torch might flicker a few seconds before you do, as if it's trying to wave goodbye. You shuffle forward. The air doesn't move. There's no ventilation shaft, no fan, no system at all, really. Just the occasional vertical hole, dug upward to let the fumes drift out. Miners called these air holes, but they only worked if the wind outside cooperated. If the weather was wrong or the mine too deep, the air holes might as well be wishes. And what about the worst stuff? The deadly guests hiding in the rock? There's fire damp too. Methane gas that builds up silently, waiting for one unlucky spark. One torch, one strike of iron on stone, and boom, you're gone, along with anyone nearby. It turns out, mixing fire with gas in a sealed, rocky tomb isn't a great combo. Who could have guessed? Some miners carried caged birds, primitive canaries, often finches or even mice. If the bird dropped off its perch, you knew the air was bad. Of course, by the time you noticed your bird was belly up, you were probably halfway there yourself. There's debate among historians whether this practice started in medieval times or came later. But the fear of invisible air killers, that part is absolutely real and very, very old. Now imagine you're deep underground with 10 other miners. You're all cramped into a passage barely shoulder wide, each of you swinging picks or shovels, breathing hard, sweating more. The carbon dioxide from your lungs builds up quickly in such tight quarters. That's right. You're slowly poisoning the room just by existing, which is honestly kind of rude when you think about it. Every breath is a wager. You inhale, hoping the air has enough oxygen. You exhale, knowing you're just making it worse. If someone faints, there's not much you can do except try to drag them back to cleaner air, if you even know which way that is. One wrong turn, and you might both be part of the rock forever. Sometimes the mine fights back louder. Rotten wooden supports groan and crack under the pressure of 1,000 tons of earth, letting loose a mini avalanche of dust. You freeze. Is it a collapse? Or just a moody ceiling adjusting itself? Everyone pauses, eyes darting upward, hearts pounding faster, burning even more of that precious oxygen. You wait and wait. Then someone mutters a prayer and swings their pick again, and the rhythm resumes. You catch your breath, if you can call it that, and wonder how long you've been down here. Hours, maybe, or days. Time gets weird without sunlight. You reach a small chamber where a few men are resting on piles of rubble. One of them offers you a drink from a tin flask. Water, hopefully, but possibly beer. Hydration is hydration. Suddenly your lamp dims. It's subtle, but your stomach knots instantly. You lift it, shake it. Still dim. Someone else notices. The air feels heavier. Another lamp flickers. No one says a word. You all know what it means. Bad air. Somewhere nearby, there's a pocket of suffocating nothingness leaking into the shaft. You try not to panic. If you move too quickly, you'll just breathe more. So you shuffle back the way you came, holding the fading light like it's your last hope, which it kind of is. You start thinking irrationally about how absurd this is. People are dying to pull shiny rocks out of the earth. You can't eat silver. It doesn't keep you warm. And yet, it's valuable enough to risk all this. Why? Because some count wants a new goblet? Still, you go on. You've got a family. You've got debts. You've got no choice. You press forward, deeper into the mine where even the air is trying to kill you. You finally reach a break in the tunnel, where the shaft dips sharply downward. There's no staircase, of course, no neatly carved steps or sturdy ladders, just a primitive rope pulley hanging from a wooden crossbeam that creaks with every gust of stale air. You stare at it for a moment, then look around for another way down, but there isn't one. If you want to keep your job and your fingers, you climb. This is how miners descend deeper levels of a shaft. Slowly, cautiously, and with the upper body strength of a circus acrobat. The ladders are made from whatever timber they could scrounge up, lashed together with the strips of hide or iron nails that rust the moment they're driven in. They're slimy with condensation and worn smooth by decades of calloused hands. The rungs wobble under your weight like they're whispering, "Not today, friend." Some shafts have knotted ropes instead. because nothing says safety like trusting your life to a frayed hemp line soaked in bat droppings. You glance down and see only blackness, your torchlight swallowed entirely. You have no idea how deep it goes. 50 feet? 100? In some cases, medieval miners went down more than 600 feet, especially in silver-rich regions like Schwaz in Tyrol. It's basically a vertical tomb waiting to happen. Your boots slip slightly as you grip the ladder, descending one slow, agonizing rung at a time. Each creak is a death threat, and every few minutes dust and gravel fall from above, a reminder that there's always someone higher up, and that accidents have gravity. One misstep, one broken rung, and down you go, bouncing off jagged rock like a rag doll in a meat grinder. Oh, and if you're thinking maybe you'd tie yourself to the ladder with a safety rope. First of all, how cute. Second, ropes were expensive. They weren't wasting one on a peasant unless that peasant happened to be the rope. Yes, in emergencies, bodies were used to weigh down counterweights. You might not want to think about that too hard. Sometimes miners use baskets instead. Not cozy woven ones with a cushion, mind you. Huge wooden tubs meant for hauling rocks. You'd climb in, hold on for dear life, and let a winch operator at the surface lower you down like you were the world's most disposable bucket of soup. If the pulley failed, or if the crank jammed, or if the guy at the top sneezed while turning it, well, gravity wins again. It wasn't just the descent that was dangerous. It was being down there. Think of the structure itself. Cut by hand, reinforced with just enough wood to make you think it'll hold. The further down you go, the hotter it gets. You'd think it would get colder, but no. Thanks to geothermal heating, it starts to feel like the inside of an oven built by someone who hates you personally. One miner's journal, An Unusual Survival from the 15th Century, describes the layers below the surface like entering the lungs of hell. Hot air, choking dust, and walls that seem to pulse with pressure. There's still debate among scholars about how miners survived in shafts with such extreme heat and no airflow. Some claim they simply rotated out every few minutes. Others argue that miners got used to it. Personally, you're not convinced anyone gets used to sweating through leather in a rock oven with a death ladder above them. You finally reach a level spot, the ladder groaning behind you as you step off. You're shaking, but not from cold. It's adrenaline. It always is. Another miner passes by, mutters something about the next shift, and keeps walking. His face is smeared with soot. You realize his nose is bleeding. He doesn't notice. This is your new normal. Descending deeper into the earth with nothing but splinters, luck, and maybe a whispered prayer to Saint Barbara, patroness of miners. Because down here, there's nowhere to run. You go down slow, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, you come back up. You crouch low in the tunnel, the rock pressing in from all sides. It's barely wide enough for your shoulders, and your back already protests from the angle you have to hold just to shuffle forward. There's another support beam ahead, a crooked piece of timber wedged between the floor and ceiling, like a toothpick holding up a collapsing cake. It groans. Loudly. You freeze. Everyone freezes. Because when a medieval mine creaks, it's not whispering, it's warning. These support beams were never engineered with anything resembling precision. Wood was chosen mostly based on what was lying around. Green timber? Good enough. Split, warped, riddled with knots? Even better, it's cheap. Oak, pine, fir, doesn't matter. As long as it holds up the ceiling for another day. Except the weight pressing down is immense. Even a shallow tunnel carries the crushing load of earth, stone, and time. A single compromised beam can trigger a domino collapse. There's a story passed among the older miners, a real classic, about a guy named Hans who swore his tunnel was stable because he'd wedged in 4 solid logs. On day 3, the logs gave out. His partner heard the crack from 30 meters away. By the time they dug back to the tunnel, all that remained of Hans was a smashed helmet and a bent pickaxe. Whether it's true or not is up for debate, but you notice nobody volunteers for Hans's tunnel anymore. In some deeper operations, miners reinforced walls with cribbing, a kind of crude wooden lattice designed to take pressure off the surrounding rock. Problem is, it only works if done well, and done well was not exactly the industry standard. Most of the time, supports were patched in after cave-ins had already happened. That's right, Sometimes they'd wait for a small collapse before fixing the structural problem, like putting a bandage on a bear bite and saying, "Should be good now." And of course, they didn't have sensors or seismic tools. No way to detect subtle shifts in pressure or the creeping expansion of stress fractures. The only tool they had was experience. And when experience said, "This wall feels twitchy," that was your evacuation plan. Just get out. Fast. Or as fast as you could in a tunnel designed by nightmares and constructed with medieval math. Some collapses happened slowly. First, a few pebbles fell from the ceiling, then dust, then the low, sickening groan of a beam buckling under pressure. You might have seconds. Maybe. In a miracle scenario, someone upstream hears the warning and yells. In a more common one, you don't hear anything except the rumble of earth snapping in on itself. No time to run. No time to scream. Just the sensation of the world turning to weight, pinning you forever. You pass through a side tunnel, barely noticing a little cross etched into the wall. It's old, faded. Someone carved it long ago as a prayer, or maybe a marker for the dead. You touch it lightly. It's warm from the air around it. Strange. You move on. And yet, people kept mining. Even after cave-ins. Even after stories like Hans. Because there was money in the ground. Maybe not for you, but for the church, for the Lord, for the people who'd never set foot underground. You're just the muscle. And if you die in a collapse, they'll hire your cousin, or your son, maybe both. Some mining records from the 14th century in Cornwall mention dozens of accidental burials. Each year. Accidental. As if the mountain just misfiled them. And there's debate today about how common cave-ins truly were. Some say they were frequent but underreported, while others argue that skilled miners actually did maintain relatively stable shafts. Still, with tools made of iron and plans sketched on bark, it's hard to put much faith in their engineering, especially when you're standing under it. As you shuffle past another support post, you tap it with your pick. Not because it helps, but because everyone does it. It's like asking politely for the tunnel not to kill you today. Just today. You hear it before you see it. A rhythmic drip, drip, drip echoing through the tunnel like a ticking clock. You round a bend and suddenly feel your boots sink slightly into cold, slick mud. Then the next step goes deeper, and the next, water. Again. It always finds you. This tunnel is flooding. Not dramatically, yet, but steadily, and with purpose. Medieval mines were notorious for this. Dig too deep, and eventually, you hit groundwater, or a hidden spring. Or maybe the mine just decides it's thirsty and starts gulping in surface rain from somewhere miles away. However it happens, the result is the same. Rising pools, soaked boots, and the creeping knowledge that water does not care about your shift schedule. You press forward, the torchlight shimmering on the surface of the shallow stream now snaking through the floor. Sometimes miners tried to carve channels to divert the water, little trench-like paths to guide it away from work zones. But that only worked if the flow was gentle, and this isn't. You pass a half-submerged bucket, bobbing uselessly in the murky sludge. One of the walls glistens with a thin waterfall. You can't tell if it's new or always been there. Either way, it doesn't look friendly. In the bigger mining operations of the 13th and 14th centuries, particularly in places like Freiburg and Goslar, they eventually started building basic water lifting systems. Think of them as very enthusiastic hamster wheels, turned by actual humans. Or worse, exhausted children. These rag and chain pumps use loop chains and leather pads to scoop water up and out of lower shafts. It worked kind of, until it didn't. Because here's the thing about medieval water management, it was always behind the problem. Tunnels would be excavated with no drainage plan, and only when the water started rising past your ankles would someone shout, "Right, we should do something." Cue a scramble of buckets, back-breaking hand scooping, and a frantic attempt to plug leaks with moss, rags, or sometimes straight-up prayer. Spoiler, the water always wins. You duck into a side alcove to check a digging face, and here the water is deeper, almost to your shins. You kneel anyway, because that's what the job demands, and start scraping the wall with your pick, searching for veins of galena or tin. Each strike sends droplets flying, soaking your sleeves. You can't see it, but behind this wall might be an underground reservoir. There are legends. Miners whisper them after long shifts, of entire teams who broke through to one of these hidden lakes and were instantly swallowed by a roaring deluge. That's not just superstition. In 1341, near the Harz Mountains, there was a recorded incident where a crew punched into what they thought was dry rock. Instead, they unleashed an underground flood that killed 12 men and sealed the tunnel completely. Some accounts say their bodies were never found. Others suggest the mine was quietly filled in and abandoned, as if even the surface world didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And it's not just the drowning that's deadly. The weight of water can destabilize tunnels, erode supports, and cause collapses without warning. Wet walls are heavier walls. Mucky floors are harder to run across. And moisture carries more than mud. It brings rot. The wooden beams supporting this very shaft could be quietly weakening, even as they hold up the crushing weight of centuries. Some miners tried waterproofing beams with pitch or tar. Others avoided obviously soggy tunnels unless forced. But you don't have that luxury. The Lord wants ore. The foreman wants speed. You want your next meal. So you keep digging in wet socks, hoping your torch doesn't sputter out in the damp air. You splash through another puddle, muttering under your breath. Your fingers are numb. Your knees ache. There's a weird noise now, like rushing wind but heavier. You pause. Is it air? Is it more water? You look behind you. Nothing. Just the slow drip, drip, drip. The rock in front of you looks angry. That's the only way to describe it. It's dense, stubborn, with tiny silver threads snaking through the black stone like veins in an old man's hand. You've been at it for over an hour now, chipping, scraping, swearing. Nothing's giving, but the foreman says this is the good stuff. Rich ore. Hard to reach, harder to harvest. So someone came up with an idea. Fire setting. Sounds almost cozy, right? Spoiler, it's not. You shuffle backward, making room. Other miners have already started dragging in armfuls of wood, piling it at the rock face like they're about to roast marshmallows. But no, this fire has a different purpose. It's medieval mining's version of dynamite. They're going to light the whole thing on fire and let the heat crack the rock open. That's right, literally set the walls on fire. In an enclosed tunnel, underground, with limited air. Brilliant. The wood is stacked, the torches come out, and someone mutters a prayer to St. Barbara again. Always her. Then the flames roar to life, licking up the pile and quickly heating the space like a blacksmith's forge. You feel the temperature spike almost instantly. Your skin prickles, sweat pouring down your face. The air turns thick and smoky, but nobody leaves just yet. You're all waiting for the rock to scream, and it does. With a sickening crack, a chunk of the ore wall suddenly fractures. The intense heat expands the rock unevenly, breaking it apart along its weakest lines. That's the goal. Once the fire dies down, someone will come in with water or vinegar to rapidly cool the surface, shocking it even further. Then, and only then, do the picks come out. The stone is softer, crumbly in places, ready to give up its riches, unless it doesn't. Because sometimes, fire setting goes wrong. Sometimes the heat warps the ceiling beams, or sets them alight. Sometimes the fire burns too long and consumes all the oxygen in the chamber, creating a silent death trap before the digging even begins. And sometimes, and this is the fun part, it just causes a cave-in. One 14th century mining account from Tyrol notes a collapse that buried 3 men during a fire setting gone wrong. It said they didn't even have time to scream. Of course, it's hard to say how often these accidents truly occurred. The medieval record is blurry at best, but there are charred timbers in ancient tunnels to this day, burned beams from fire settings that got out of hand. You wipe your forehead and take a few steps back from the heat. The flame is a living thing now, snarling at the rock and huffing up smoke that sticks to your lungs. Your torch feels redundant. The entire tunnel flickers red and gold, shadows dancing like devils on the wall. Someone jokes that this is the devil's way of mining. You all chuckle, but nervously, because deep down, part of you believes it. Setting fire to a tunnel that already wants you dead feels like begging for punishment, but it works, most of the time. And in the Middle Ages, most of the time is a pretty good survival rate. When the fire is finally reduced to glowing embers, you and the others move back in. The air is still hot, almost steamy now, and your pick sinks into the weakened rock with surprising ease. This part goes quickly. Stone chips fly, ore is collected in sacks. For a brief moment, there's progress, real reward, that rare miner's high, the sense that the risk might, just maybe, be worth it. Then someone coughs, a deep, wet, rattling sound, the kind that doesn't go away. You glance over. One of the younger workers leans against the wall, his face pale, his hands trembling. You've heard that cough before. It's the kind that stays, the kind that says the smoke got in too deep. You press on, because that's what you do, because this is how you mine. With fire and sweat and risk, every crack of the rock is a gamble. Every breath could be your last. Your hands are stained with dust, gray, black, and something in between. It clings to your nails, sticks in the creases of your knuckles, and settles in your lungs like a permanent house guest. You barely notice it now, but deep down, you know something's wrong. Your breath doesn't come as easily as it used to. There's a tightness in your chest that no rest ever fixes. That's the thing about mining. The mine doesn't always kill you in one spectacular event. Sometimes it kills you slowly, one poison breath at a time. You lean against the wall of the tunnel for a moment, trying not to cough. Someone hands you a crust of bread, and you chew it silently, your throat already dry again. You can taste the dust. It's everywhere. You're surrounded by minerals. Silver, lead, copper, arsenic. You name it, it's probably somewhere in the rock. That sounds great if you're a medieval noble with a mint to feed. Not so great if you're the one breaking that rock apart without so much as a scarf for protection. Lead is one of the worst. In mines like those in Derbyshire or the Harz Mountains, galena, lead ore, was king. But galena dust gets into your lungs. It doesn't just irritate, it poisons. Over time, it causes muscle weakness, memory problems, tremors. The kind of slow collapse that no one talks about until you can't hold your pick anymore. They called it miner's shakes, or the Grey Death, though few could afford a doctor to tell them what it really was. Then there's mercury. If you're working anywhere near cinnabar, mercury sulfide ore, you're really in trouble. Miners in places like Almaden, Spain, were exposed to mercury vapors during smelting, which was often done right at the site. The results? Hallucinations, mood swings, trembling hands, and a delightful tendency to forget where you were mid-sentence. Not that anyone could tell. Everyone's confused and exhausted anyway. In fact, by the 1300s, alchemists and physicians had started suspecting that mining made people mad. Not in the angry way, in the actual stare into space and mutter about demons way. There's a fringe theory that some of the early witch hunting hysteria in mining regions was tied to long-term metal exposure. Hallucinating miners told stories. Superstitions grew. Fingers got pointed. You spit on the ground. It's dark. You think there might be blood in it, but you look away. Even basic stone dust, like quartz, found in hard rock mines, can wreak havoc on the lungs. It causes something we now know as silicosis, a brutal, irreversible disease, but in your time, it's just called old miner's breath. Coughing, gasping, wheezing, normal sounds on the night shift. No one's keeping track. There's no paperwork, no real records of workplace illness. If you stop working, you're lazy. If you die, you're unlucky. The foreman will just hire someone else. Maybe your brother, maybe your son. And let's not forget the smell. You notice it sometimes when the wind shifts. A strange, almost sweet odor. Rotten eggs. That's sulfur, another cheerful byproduct of your workspace. In high enough concentrations, it can damage your eyes and nose, cause confusion, even knock you unconscious. But hey, at least it's flammable too. The medieval full package. Still, you show up each day, because you have to. And when your hands start shaking, you tie the pick to your wrist. When the coughing gets too bad, you chew herbs and hope they'll help. Some miners wear little pouches of lavender or garlic around their necks. Supposedly it wards off bad humors, or evil spirits, or both. At this point, you'll try anything. There's a guy in your crew, Jakob. He used to be sharp, always first to spot a good vein. Now he sits quietly, eyes unfocused, murmuring to himself. Some say the mine got to him. Others say he's cursed. You're not sure there's a difference anymore. You finish your bread, take another breath, shallow, cautious, and head back toward the work face. You feel the weight in your chest and pretend it's just fatigue. That's easier than admitting the mine is already inside you. Grain by grain, dust by dust. You hear a sharp whistle from up the tunnel. That means everyone needs to move. Now. You don't ask questions. You press your back against the wall, raising one arm instinctively to shield your face. The ground beneath your boots trembles faintly. It's happening again. A blast. These days, fire setting is slowly being replaced by something more explosive. Black powder, gunpowder. Whatever you call it, it's new, it's terrifying, and it's nowhere near reliable. But when it works, it's fast. And in medieval mining, fast means profit. You peek around the corner as a crew of miners scurries out of a narrow tunnel extension, one of them gripping a stubby fuse with smoke curling from the end. The smell hits you first. Sulfur, charcoal, saltpeter. It's sharp, acrid, and very, very wrong. Black powder was first introduced to European mining in the late 14th century. It likely filtered in from China via military use, and before long, miners realized it could do more than kill soldiers. It could break rock. Of course, it took time to figure out how not to kill the miners with it. The process is nerve-wracking. First, someone drills a hole into the rock using a handheld iron bit and a hammer. It's loud, slow, and requires brutal precision. Then the powder is poured in. Loose, crude, and inconsistent. No precise measurements here. You just guess how much feels right. A fuse made from twine or straw is inserted, and the whole thing is packed with clay or rags. Then, light the fuse and run. The blast sounds like thunder caving in on itself. The air shakes. Dust flies. A dull boom echoes down the shaft, followed by silence thick enough to smother thought. You wait. 10 seconds. 20. A minute. Then, cautiously, you and the others creep forward, eyes squinting through the swirling grit. This time, the rock face has split cleanly. Success. Cheers go up, though they sound hoarse, exhausted. You're all grateful no one was launched across the tunnel or buried. That's not always the case. There are stories. Always stories. Of misfires. Of fuses that burned too fast or too slow. Of charges that went off while a miner was still tamping them down. A miner in Bohemia was reportedly blown in half, leaving nothing but a boot and a scorched cap. Is it true? Who knows? But the cap is still hanging in the foreman's shack, so make of that what you will. There's also ongoing debate among historians about how widespread powder blasting truly was before the 1500s. Some say it remained experimental for a long time, used only in the deepest or hardest shafts. Others believe desperate minds adopted it early out of sheer necessity. Either way, you're standing in the part of history where it's beginning. You're one of the test subjects, whether you like it or not. One of your crewmates picks up a fractured chunk of ore, still warm from the blast. He grins, holding it up like treasure. And it is, kind of. But you're thinking about the blast, about the powder, about how it gets stored in damp cloth sacks near a torch rack, how someone once dropped one, how everyone knows that story. The thing about medieval explosives is that they don't come with instructions. Every charge is a gamble. Every tunnel could become a cannon if you pack it wrong. And when you're miles below the surface, a misplaced explosion doesn't just take out a wall, it creates a tomb. You sweep rubble aside and begin sorting usable fragments. Your ears are still ringing. Your heart hasn't slowed. But you work anyway. Because now, instead of coaxing rock apart with fire and sweat, you're fighting it with thunder. And in this war, there are no victories. Just temporary wins. The mountain always takes back what it gave, eventually. You wake up sore, again. But soreness is the least of it. It's the kind of deep, slow ache that lives in your bones now. Like the stone itself has crept into your joints and decided to stay. You sit up on your straw mat, cough once, twice, then stop counting. The air outside the mine isn't exactly fresh either, but at least it doesn't burn when you breathe. You dress slowly, wincing as you tug on boots still damp from yesterday. The soles are worn thin, but there's no money to replace them. Not for a miner like you. You grab your pick and head back toward the shaft, past the low wooden huts that make up the mining village. There's no laughter, just the occasional shuffle of feet and the clatter of tools. Everyone's tired, always. This is the rhythm of a medieval miner's life. Wake, work, maybe eat, then sleep just long enough to do it again. Days blend into nights. You barely see the sun. Children grow up with soot on their faces. Your fingernails are permanently black. Your back? Bent before 30. You try to remember what standing up straight felt like. Medieval mining wasn't just dangerous, it was relentless. In towns like Schwaz or Kutna Hora, entire families worked in and around the mines. If you were a man, you dug. If you were a woman, you sorted ore. If you were a child, well, you fetched tools, carried buckets, or squeezed into crevices too tight for adults. Everyone worked, because if you didn't eat. The Lord who owns your mind doesn't know your name. Why would he? He's in a stone house on a hill somewhere, dining on roasted meat while you're gnawing dry crust. He gets a cut of every ounce of ore pulled from the earth. The church gets theirs too. You get a ration, maybe a copper or two. Some mines even paid in scrip, little tokens only redeemable at the company store. Funny how the prices there never seem to go down. The workday begins with a horn blast, low and mournful. You follow the others into the shaft, single file, like livestock through a gate. No one talks much anymore. You're saving your breath, literally. A fellow miner, Bruno, leans against the wall as you pass. His eyes are sunken. He hasn't been right since that miner collapse 2 weeks ago. Still shows up, doesn't speak much, just digs. You wonder if anyone's checked if he's still alive. By midday, your arms are jelly. The heat is unbearable. You sit for a moment in a niche, wiping your brow with the same cloth you'll later use to wrap your food. Your sweat tastes of iron. You think about your father. He mined too. Died of miner's lung. Same as his father before him. It's like a family curse, but no one calls it that. They just nod and get back to work. There's no retirement plan, no pension, no escape. The only way out is through injury, illness, or death. And even that's not guaranteed. You could be trapped for days, weeks, if the shaft caves in and no one comes looking. Some stories tell of miners surviving in collapsed tunnels, carving notes into the walls before the air ran out. Most never left a trace. A few do try to leave, of course, to find better work in the fields, or maybe join a monastery. But even monks need metal for bells and incense burners. Even pilgrims walk on roads built with tools dug from somewhere like this. You rise again, back to the wall, swinging your pick in a rhythm that almost feels like a heartbeat. There's comfort in the motion, even as it chips away what's left of your strength. You work until the horn sounds again, long and low. End of shift. You drag yourself back up the tunnel, limbs leaden, breath shallow, eyes stinging. Outside, the sky is purple. You think, was it morning when I went in? You don't remember. Doesn't matter. You'll be back again tomorrow, unless the mind decides otherwise. As you trudge back to the shaft the next morning, something's wrong. You hear it in the wind before you see it. An odd, hollow silence hanging over the camp like a blanket soaked in dread. No tools clanging, no idle chatter, just hushed voices, and the occasional cry that no one dares raise above a whisper. Then you spot the ladder, broken, snapped in half like a twig. Someone didn't come back up last night. You approach slowly, the crowd parting slightly. A foreman stands over the shaft's edge, his jaw tight. 2 men are climbing down with ropes and a makeshift stretcher. That's never a good sign. Someone's hurt, or worse. You grip your pick tighter. This isn't rare. Accidents happen all the time, and when they do, the miners handle it themselves. There's no rescue team, no emergency plan, just ropes, shovels, and prayers. You glance around, faces are pale, lips drawn tight. No one says it out loud, but you're all thinking it. It could have been me. Might still be. After an hour, the stretcher comes back up. There's a body on it, covered in a coarse wool blanket. You can see one boot sticking out, still caked in dried mud. One of the younger miners looks away and vomits into a bucket. Someone else whispers a name you recognize. You sit down without realizing it. The stone is cold beneath you. That's when the priest arrives. Miners in the Middle Ages worked with death as a daily companion, so they kept their rituals close. You watch as the priest sprinkles holy water over the stretcher, muttering Latin under his breath. A few men cross themselves. One woman clutches a rosary, mouthing the words of the Lord's Prayer. This is as close as you'll get to a funeral. In some towns, if the body couldn't be recovered, they'd just seal off the tunnel with a cross carved into the wall and call it done. You remember hearing about the mining saints. St. Barbara, again, always the favorite. Miners used to carve her image near dangerous areas, not because they thought she'd stop the rocks from falling, but because if she was watching, maybe their souls had a better shot. In the Alps, some miners even believed in the Berggeist, the mountain spirit, sometimes helpful, more often not. If you heard knocking in an empty shaft, it might be the spirit warning you, or luring you deeper. Some swore by offerings, bread, milk, even a silver coin left in a crevice. You're not sure you believe, but then again, you've heard those knocks. Folklore is thick down here. There are tales of blue flames dancing in abandoned shafts, signs of poison gas maybe, or just the mine playing tricks. Others speak of ghost miners, shadows glimpsed out of the corner of your eye, dressed in old tunics, still working a vein that no longer yields ore. You've seen things. Everyone has. You just don't talk about them. The body is carried away and the tunnel is closed for now. Just for today. Maybe. You sit with your back to the rock and realize something. No one is surprised. No shouting, no outrage. Just a tired nod, a few muttered prayers, and then business as usual. Because mining doesn't stop. It can't stop. There's always someone else ready to take the next shift. Always another vein to chase, another tool to swing, another life to risk. You catch the foreman's eye. He gives a short nod toward another shaft. A different entrance. Work still needs doing. You pick yourself up, brush off the dust, and start walking. The mountain took someone today, but it still wants more. You head into a different shaft this time. It's older, quieter, less trafficked. That should feel safer, right? But somehow it doesn't. There's something about the silence that feels heavier than usual, like the rock itself is holding its breath. The walls are covered in white streaks of mineral deposits, and the timber supports are grayer than you remember, splintered, bowed inward, sagging like tired shoulders. The beams here creak in rhythm with your steps, and somewhere in the distance, water drips at an unnervingly steady pace. 1, 2, 3. Like it's counting down, and then you hear it. A faint shuffle behind you. You spin around. Nothing. Just shadows. Maybe your own. Or maybe not. Superstition runs thick in the veins of miners. Even the most practical ones. The ones with calloused hands and sunken eyes. They whisper things. About this shaft. About places where tools disappear, where lamps refuse to light, where the air feels colder than it should. They call it a dead vein, not because there's no ore, but because something lives in it that isn't you. In truth, the shaft is probably just poorly ventilated. Cold spots happen. Still, you light your torch again and check it, just in case. Sometimes it's not superstition, it's sabotage. Mining was a business, and rivalries were brutal. In towns where multiple groups worked nearby, tunnels might overlap, and when two crews started digging too close, tempers flared. There are medieval reports, real ones, of tunnels being intentionally collapsed to block off rivals, or worse, to trap them. A handful of scholars even argue that certain cave-ins were actually murder in disguise, covered up under tons of rock. You think about that as you work deeper into the dead shaft. The wall here is jagged, raw, with small crystal deposits catching your torchlight. Beautiful, but worthless. No silver, no tin. You strike anyway, just to keep moving. Then the sound again. Behind you. This time, it's more than a shuffle. It's a thud. Something falling? Or someone? You freeze, heart pounding, eyes locked on the black mouth of the tunnel behind you. Nothing. But you know what you heard. You remind yourself of the logical explanation. Rocks shifting, timber creaking, old air currents stirring up dust. Mines breathe, after all. The deeper ones almost seem to inhale and exhale. It's unnerving, but it's just physics. Or so the better read monks claim. But you can't shake the feeling. Some miners swear that mines remember. That when someone dies underground, a piece of them stays. That their footsteps echo. That their coughs still rattle in the air long after the body's gone. You'd laugh, but you've heard those coughs. You've felt the air shift like someone just passed behind you when no one was there. Even the church, skeptical as it could be, allowed for a kind of underground purgatory, a place where souls waited. Some mines had chapels at their entrance, where miners lit candles for those who never came back out. Others carved crosses directly into the stone, crude and shaking, as if chiseling protection with every breath. You keep working. One strike, then another, but you don't whistle like usual. The air's too heavy, the silence too thick. You glance at your torch, still lit. That's something. Then you spot it. A name crudely etched into the wall, half faded, barely legible. You recognize it. Jakob, the one who stopped speaking, the one who hadn't shown up this morning. Your breath catches. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe someone else carved it. Or maybe he came here before. Maybe this was his last shift. You stand there motionless, the chisel still in your hand, and suddenly you understand what the older miners mean when they say, some tunnels don't want to be opened. You back out slowly, torch held high, not turning your back until you're certain the silence behind you stays silent. You won't be returning to that shaft. The days blur. You lose track of time, not just hours, but weeks. It happens underground. The absence of sunlight erodes your sense of rhythm until the difference between morning and night becomes just a matter of how stiff your joints are. Your skin, once sun-kissed, now carries a pale gray tint. You're becoming part of the mine, cell by cell. But today brings something different, a summons. The foreman calls your name and points toward a new section just opened, deeper, older, previously abandoned, but now reopened to chase a promising vein. You nod. Of course, you don't have a choice. This level is far below the others, carved before your time by hands just as desperate. The air grows hotter with each rung of the ladder you descend. The walls seem to weep. Every surface is slick, like the mine itself is sweating. You breathe shallowly. The air is heavy and stale, barely enough to keep a flame alive. As you trudge down a narrow passage, your torch flickers. The flame gutters, then flares unnaturally blue. You pause. That isn't good. The old miners used to warn about blue flames. The fire seized the poison. They'd whisper, and they weren't wrong. What they didn't know was that certain gases, like methane or hydrogen sulfide, can cause torches to burn blue. You know this now, or at least you've heard the explanation. Doesn't make it less eerie. It's hard to say how much gas is safe. Even harder to tell when it's building up. The mine gives no warning, just a faint scent, like eggs gone bad, or sometimes no smell at all. You press on, cautiously, trying not to disturb the air more than necessary. Ventilation is a joke down here. Some shafts use simple bellows powered by boys on cranks, pumping fresh air through leather tubes. Others rely on natural drafts, or even long shafts that run up to the surface, hoping the wind cooperates. Spoiler, it rarely does. You round a bend and stumble into a wider chamber. It's deathly still. At first it looks empty. Just another rock face. But then you see them. Picks. 2 of them, lying abandoned on the floor. A lantern long burned out, and scratched into the wall. A handful of shallow gouges. Someone was here. More than one someone. And they left in a hurry. Or not at all. You feel the air move. Barely. Like the mine is exhaling. Suddenly, you remember the tale of the bad air, told by the oldest miner in your village. He called it the still tödliche wind, the silent, deadly wind. You laughed when he told it, but now you wonder if he was ever in this room. There's debate among modern scholars about how much medieval miners understood about gas exposure. Some believe they recognized certain warning signs, like dizziness, nausea, or animals refusing to enter a shaft. Others argue they only understood the danger after it was too late. Either way, one fact is clear. No one had gas masks, just guts and guesses. You don't stay in the chamber long. Your gut says leave, and your gut's seen a lot. You mark the tunnel wall with chalk and turn back. On your way up, you pass 2 men headed down. They joke about treasure. You don't join in, you just nod and keep climbing. You hope they come back. Later at the surface, someone asks you what it was like down there. You shrug. Say nothing. The truth isn't useful. Not here. You sit alone near the edge of camp, watching the smoke from the smelter drift upward into the darkening sky. It smells of scorched rock and sulfur. You realize you've started craving the taste of metal. You chew your bread slowly, almost missing the grit that always clings to it. You dream that night of blue flames, of walls that breathe, of names carved into stone. You wake coughing. You always do. The next morning starts with shouting. You're halfway through lacing your boots when you hear it. Angry voices, raised just loud enough to cut through the usual groan of carts and coughs. You move toward the noise instinctively, along with half the camp, curiosity overcoming caution. At the center of the commotion is a group of miners, red-faced and dust-covered, arguing with the foreman. One of them waves a fistful of blackened cloth, what's left of a shirt, soaked through with something dark. Blood? Grease? No one's sure. The man yells that the new shaft has bad supports, that the air is thick with poison, that they nearly suffocated when a tunnel collapsed behind them. The foreman, arms crossed, says nothing. Finally, he grunts and dismisses them all with a shrug. The Lord says dig, so you dig. That's it. You'd like to be surprised, but you're not. In mining towns, labor disputes aren't new. In fact, as early as the 14th century, there were reports of miners organizing informal protests. Strikes of a sort, though they didn't call them that. They called them pauses, temporary refusals, threats to walk away unless working conditions improved. And sometimes they worked. Lords and mine owners depended on the labor. If too many miners died too quickly, or if entire villages refused to enter the shafts, the flow of silver stopped. And when the silver stopped, so did the taxes. So did the gilded church windows. So did the wars. But just as often, protests were ignored. Or worse, a few ringleaders might be fined, or jailed, or mysteriously reassigned to the deepest, most unstable shaft. The message was always the same. You're replaceable. You go back to your hut, you sit in silence. Then you hear your name. You've been reassigned. Not deeper, not deadlier, just different. A seam near the surface, long thought, exhausted. But now, someone's decided there might be ore left. So, off you go. You arrive to find a short, narrow tunnel carved into the base of a ridge. It's dry at least, and the light from outside still reaches the entrance. A welcome change. You start to dig. The rock here is brittle, easier to break, and soon your pick hits something that rings. Ore. You hold up a chunk. Lead, maybe. Or silver. It glints faintly in the sunlight, and for a moment, you feel good. Almost proud. Then you hear the rumble. It's faint at first, far away, like thunder on the other side of a hill. Then it builds. The ground shakes, the walls groan. You drop the ore and rush toward the entrance. Dust explodes behind you as the ridge shudders like an animal waking from a nightmare. You make it out, just barely. The collapse seals the tunnel. A plume of gray dust rises like smoke from a chimney. You fall to your knees, panting, heart thudding like a hammer on steel. Others run toward the site, shouting your name. You wave, too stunned to speak. You survived. This time. Later, sitting by the fire, you listen as people tell the story. How the mine groaned. How the tunnel fell. How the ridge took back what it owned. Some say it was cursed. Others say it was unstable rock. The truth? No one reinforced the walls. No one checked the timbers. No one ever does. You realize something. The mine doesn't just kill with rockfalls or gas or disease. It kills with silence, with apathy, with the quiet belief that this is just how it is. You lean back, the firelight flickering across your dirt-smeared face. You're still here, but you're starting to wonder, for how much longer? There's a rumor going around the camp now. One of those whispered half-truths that spreads like smoke between shifts. They say a nobleman is coming, a real one. A wealthy investor from the city, sent by the crown to inspect the mines and improve production. You try not to care, but you can feel the tension in the air. The foreman walks straighter. The tools get polished, as if clean iron will impress anyone who's never swung a pick in their life. Even the carts are oiled and dusted, as if the smell of rot and sweat can be masked with pine tar. You hear the noble arrives with a full retinue, guards, a clerk, and even a physician. That's a rare sight. The doctor doesn't look at you, of course. He's here for the men with titles, not the ones with coughs. Still, you watch him curiously, wondering if he'll notice the hollow-eyed men lining up for inspection like sheep. The noble doesn't speak to you. He speaks at you. He talks about output, about quotas, about how this mine is underperforming. He frowns at the carts of ore and points at a map showing deeper seams to explore. He calls the deaths this month unfortunate losses. You stand there, nodding like everyone else, and resist the urge to laugh or cry. Then he's gone, and the orders come down like stones in a flood. Dig deeper, extend the shafts, triple the production, more silver, more tin, more everything. And just like that, the mine swallows your schedule whole. Shifts stretch longer. Rest, breaks, shrink. The men work like their lives depend on it, because they do. It gets worse. New shafts are started with no proper ventilation. Old beams are reused and repurposed, even when they're warped from water and age. The mine groans louder each night, and no one listens. One morning, you descend into a shaft and find a rat lying dead near the entrance. Nothing unusual, except this time, there's 4 of them, all stiff, all curled the same way. A chill creeps down your spine. In mining folklore, rats are protectors. If they flee, you follow. If they die, well, that's a warning too. But there's no turning back. Not now. That evening, another miner disappears. No one knows which tunnel he was in. There's too many now, and the maps, if you can even call them that, are out of date. It said he was last seen near the newly extended shaft of 4B. You passed that one yesterday. It smelled wrong, like sulfur and damp wool. You didn't stay long. They try to find him, digging through collapsed rubble and narrow offshoots. Nothing. No body, no tools, just a hollow tunnel and silence. The noble, of course, is already gone. Someone starts scratching a tally into the camp's main beam. 1 line for every death this season. You watch the marks multiply. You've stopped learning the new workers' names. There's no point. And then, something odd. You find yourself humming a tune while you dig. Something your mother used to sing. You haven't thought of it in years. It keeps your mind occupied while your arms go numb. Keeps the fear in check. One of the younger miners hears you and joins in. And for a moment, just a moment, you remember you're human. But then the pick slips, and the dust swirls, and you're back to choking, gasping, blinking through grit as the mine tightens its grip. The tunnels are longer now, the walls closer, the lights dimmer. You wonder if you've dug too far, not just into the earth, but into something older, something that doesn't want to be disturbed. You go to sleep that night, hearing the walls breathe. You wake wondering if it was just a dream. It's hard to say when the mind stops feeling like a place and starts feeling like a presence. You descend again today, just like always. But today, something is off. The lanterns flicker too soon. The air is too still. You feel it in your shoulders before your brain catches up. A tightness like you're being watched, and not by your fellow miners. You keep walking. The tunnel ahead yawns wider than you remember. Your boots crunch over loose gravel, your torch bobbing in one hand. You glance back. The entrance is gone, swallowed by bends in the shaft and the slow drift of dust. You're deep, too deep, farther than you've ever meant to go. Then your flame dims, just a little at first, like it's shy, then more. The light dances weakly before guttering into a sickly orange haze. You hold it high, heart thumping in your ears. The darkness presses in like fog made of stone. You press forward. You're looking for something, anything. Maybe an air vent, maybe a seam, maybe just an excuse to turn back without being called a coward. You find a pocket of ore, glimmering faintly in your weak torchlight. It's almost beautiful, but you don't touch it, not yet. A few steps more and you hear a whisper. It could be wind, or it could be your own breath, echoing off the walls. But no, it's words, or syllables that want to be words. You freeze, listening, pick in hand. The whisper doesn't stop. It circles you, teases your ears, almost sings. You've heard legends about this, tales passed from miner to miner about the knocker, a spirit that taps on the walls, warning or luring, no one knows which. Some think it's a ghost, Others say it's just the mind talking to itself. A few believe it's the sound of the mountain counting its treasures and its trespassers. You should leave, but you don't. You can't. Something holds you in place. Not fear exactly. Not awe either. Just a weight. Like gravity, but thicker. You step forward again, and the floor shifts. Just an inch. Just enough. A soft rumble. You jump back. A chunk of ceiling groans, then drops. Thud. Right where you were. Dust explodes upward like a sigh. You cough, stumble, blink. Still breathing. But barely. It was a warning. Or a test. Either way, you failed. You scramble backward now, heart pounding. One hand pressed to the wall. You don't run. You can't. Not here. Running leads to slips, to dead ends, to more collapses. You move with purpose, retracing your steps. Each corner looks the same. Every turn unfamiliar. And then, a sliver of light. The shaft, the way out. You emerge half crawling, half falling, lungs heaving, knees scraped. Your skin is damp, not with sweat, but with something colder. Fear, maybe. You sit just beyond the tunnel mouth, staring back into that mouth of stone. It looks still, harmless, like it never tried to take you. Around you, the camp continues as always. Picks clang. Men curse. Fires crackle. Someone laughs. Life goes on. But you know now, really know, that the mine isn't just a place. It watches, it waits, it chooses. You made it out today, but it's not done with you. And tomorrow, you'll go back in. Because that's what you do. Because that's what everyone does. Because there is no other choice. So now the torches grow dim, and the last echoes of the pickaxes fade into silence. The tunnels close behind you like pages in a book that no one dares reopen. Your breath slows, your fingers unclench. The weight of the mine lingers, but only like a fading shadow. You're safe now. In your own space, far from the depths, where stone no longer breathes and walls no longer whisper. Let your mind soften, like the candle melting slow on a windowsill. Let the dust settle in your thoughts, each grain drifting down in quiet spirals. There's no cave-in here, no poisoned air, no steps echoing behind you. Just quiet, just rest. You've walked through darkness, and now the dark is gentle, not threatening, just velvet silence, wrapping you in stillness. Your pulse softens, your chest lightens, and your body sinks just a little deeper into whatever holds it. Sleep comes slowly, like the faint glow of dawn across a soot-streaked horizon. Let go. You made it out. You made it through. And now you can rest.